But it's funny because we just met this week for the first time, and I don't know the last time I saw you. The last time, it's been a long time. And we just met back up. Let me see if I can change the view here. So it's like split. Gallery at top, full screen. How does that work? That doesn't work. Let me see how it works. Full screen exit. I'm trying to see if we can do like just a straight side by side. That would be cool. Either way, I'll figure it out some other time. But so we just met this week for the first time in a long time. We started texting again about the cast and about developing a cadence with conversation. And then I get this text from a homie back in the Midwest tonight, completely unprovoked. Okay?
I'm sure.
I'll read it to you. Man, something just popped in my head. I know you had the LCC podcast going for a while, but I don't think you're still doing it, right? Because I went on LCC YouTube channel and I didn't see it. You should definitely get back into that. He said, I've got some good ideas to separate yourselves from the pack. Adding your own live music, getting into what motivates you in life, the whole story. You know, people's story, everybody's stories that are around us is what he was going into. Your life, moving to California, the whole thing. It'd literally be like a tell-all. Only thing I'd worry about is your work sees it. Dude, our lives were crazy. But it's just cool because, like, I've been really diving into the ancient precept of... So I've been reading a lot of different books, stuff that I want to rehash on the cast. Of course, in full transparency here, both of us hopped on this thing is just as an exercise. We're like, hey, we're not fully prepared for this. We don't have notes. The idea is to start developing a cadence where we do it more frequently. But it's crazy because that happened, right? And a little freaky, right?
Yeah,
would you agree?
Yeah.
I mean, he sent me that literally like an hour ago.
Wow.
And we're just now getting back into this, right? And so, and I sent him that, and he was like, we had a little back and forth. He's like, wow, that's crazy. I was like, crazy, you should say that. We just decided we're gonna start it back up tonight. He's like, no way. And I said, well, yeah, we try to do the 3 topics: nutrition, fitness, mentality. Try to incorporate stories as we go. Then try to keep a common thread going. So like from cast to cast to cast, kind of pick up where we left off and have a development, if you will. He said, I get it totally. I think if you just stick to the same thing, blah, 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 blah. But anyway, that's to say, like the stuff I've been diving into lately has, and you haven't heard from me in a while. I've been kind of out of pocket, getting into a little bit of, just kind of outside of the path, let's say. Have sort of wandered off the path and played around, and I found my way back to it. And in implementing the Left Coast Caveman way of life has really got me on a mode where, like, the past 10 days, I'm like, okay, let's go. I'm on like a let's go get it mode, right? And then as you start doing that, I've noticed like the universe starts bringing things to you, or God, or the higher power, or the mentality that you, like when we talk about the mentality piece, it's always very existential, right? These things start to kind of gravitate towards you. And I've been really meditating a lot lately on like, even like in old scripture, it would say like, seek first the kingdom of God, and these things would be added unto you. Not to get like real preachy or like religiously based. I'm just saying that like the idea behind that is seek first like your purpose and like what is that has a higher value in life, and the things that you're attempting to accomplish, it will start kind of falling into place, and you'll see the path, and you'll start clicking right along, right? And so just like think about this last week, and you and I connect, and we're hitting, and like Brent is working on the logo and the content strategy and the brand strategy and these things that we've been talking about. And then this happens, and then here we are tonight, 8:30 p.m. Pacific, 8/19/2022. Sylvester and the Wolfman get back together.
It had to happen. Off. Had to happen.
Salud.
Yeah, cheers, brother.
And there's nothing wrong with a little indulgence on a Friday night.
necessary. As you've put it before, you got to stroke the beast.
You got to stroke the beast. So then that's the purpose. That's the path. How do we want to tackle this thing? Fitness modality first. How about we start with nutritional modality, only because I've got a story behind that. But let me go grab something real quick. Do you got the product that you got the Ancient Nutrition?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Let me grab something real quick. We'll cut this part out. Okay, so I was working out, and so I've been connecting with a lot of folks up here in NorCal this week, yourself included, just people who are on the path as well that are about better well-being. They're about pursuing a path in life, not doing the BS in life, not doing the playing around, not playing games and stuff. And so I got together with a good buddy, Marquise. I don't know if you met him, but
yeah, watched the fight with him before.
Yeah, we connected and we were talking about doing chin-ups, and I'm saying, he was like, I didn't know you could do chin-ups, and he just likes to throw a jab my way every once in a while, right? But I'm like, yeah, man, all the way down, all the way up. That's how you do them. He's like, oh, but that's hard on your joints. And I said, if you're having trouble with your joints, chances are it could have something to do with your fitness modality, but it's probably more likely something in your nutrition. And when we were wrapping up, I said, do you want me to grab you one of these collagen protein drinks? He's like, collagen, dude, I do not mess with that. And I'm like, well, there you go. You're talking about having problems with your joints. You're not doing collagen, and that's a problem. And I referenced this book that you gave me. You remember this, right? I don't know if you gave it to me or if I just sort of
what's it called? I can't
accidentally took it. It's Sapiens.
Oh, that probably is mine.
And so, I was just thumbing through the chapters before I started this up again. I was in an attempt to try to prepare something smart, and then I thought, why try to fake it? If I'm not prepared, I'm not prepared. Let's just wing this thing and try to get 30 to 45 minutes in of just riffing. And so, but I remember from that book, and maybe it was just something that you and I had talked about in the past, but they used to throw away the muscle meat to the dogs and eat the sinews and the tendons and things like that, and the organ meat, which was very rich in the collagen, which is what this stuff comes from. I don't think this thing is going to work very well. Let me see if I kill this light, if that works better. But I've been really diving into, I picked this up this week because what I've been using is Vital Proteins, which only has one type of collagen in it. And what I've been implementing into my routine lately is, and we've talked collagen on the cast before, is this multi-source collagen, which has it says right here and we should do a product review side by side, and we should do a separate section like outside of the cast that's just product review, and like have a it's like a strict guidelines that we use with type 1, type 2, type 3, type 5, and type 10. So I've been experimenting with this, and I don't have anything to speak on it per se, which gives me a perfect segue to say, Sylvester, take it away. What do you got on the subject of collagen intake?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in it. I've been using it for a while now. And I mean, there's just so much research supporting the benefits of it. Now, granted, it's one of those things where I can't say, oh, my life's been forever changed because I use it. But I definitely feel better considering all the high impact sports I do, from jiu-jitsu to running. I mean, at least 4 days a week, I'm engaged in those activities alone, not to mention weight training and such. And my joints feel pretty good despite having, accumulated many injuries in the past. Nothing too severe, but the ones that are annoying and they linger for quite a while. And, especially when you injure like a ligament or a tendon, I mean, you're looking at a few months of healing, before you're like tip top again. So I think from a maintenance perspective, amazing. And even from even from a prophylactic perspective, and guarding yourself, ensuring that your body has the constituent parts.
What's prophylactic mean?
Like is a way to safeguard, right? Like World War II, they used to call condoms prophylactic kits. It's like protection.
Prophylactic. So you're another word of just saying like preventative.
Yeah, that's why they call it prophylactic kits. Condoms were prophylactic kits, protection.
So but like you're saying to take it as preventative for injury.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Because you look at, so I've gotten into this one book. It's called Built from Broken. I think the last name's Hoffman. I've got an article on it. As a matter of fact, you can reference in Left Coast Caveman around inflammation, and that's kind of where I got really into the science behind collagen protein, and like going back a little further to like how most injuries occur. And most catastrophic injuries are not just all this. I mean, outside like blunt force trauma, so you're playing soccer and somebody just like bowls into you and your knee goes one way and your body goes the other. But more often what happens with like these knee or say ankle or shoulder injuries, it's an accumulation of small ones. And these accumulation of small injuries are usually from like overuse, not healing properly. And one of the hypotheses behind that is, well, if you're not healing properly, well, it could be maybe there's a dietary deficiency, and one of those could be, hey, maybe you're not getting enough collagen in your diet, right? So you're not getting enough of the constituent parts that are necessary for joint regeneration. So from your articular cartilage to your ligaments to your tendons. So, I mean, just looking at it from that perspective, and going back to this, the Sapient book, they talk about when we would hunt and would eat meats. I mean, we wouldn't let the bones go to waste, man. We boil those things. We get that marrow out, and that's a great source of collagen. And you think about your diet nowadays. I mean, how often are you eating a source of collagen outside of supplementation? I do eat bone broth a few times a week, but if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't get a whole lot of those constituent parts, right?
Well, some people never do at all.
Yeah.
And so I would say I was trying to take notes on this thing and it was just making a mess. But so the one thing I picked up on what you said was preventative, and a lot of people don't even consider this at all. And there's a couple things from like a CPG perspective. What a great opportunity for companies that, basically you're creating a product out of stuff that most people throw away. And so I think on our product reviews, we definitely dive into what would make up a good collagen supplement if you are to take it. Let's agree right here, right now, that you should have this in your diet. Why? Because our ancestors most certainly had it in their diet, which, of course, if we're here today, that means they survived, which means we survived, which means it aids in survival to have this key nutrient in your body that you can't make. You have to get it from dietary. Like you have your joints and your ligaments are breaking down as you age. And so as you start so a few things that I pick up on, like anecdotally, popping, snapping, cracking, like feeling like that tennis elbow type thing, like he was talking about with doing chin-ups. Like as I start to increase my intake in collagen, in general, I definitely notice a decrease in that, like the elbows particularly, and like the shoulders popping and like the knees, like that starts to diminish. And really what I notice a lot is like healthier skin. Like I'll notice like my skin looks healthier when I shave. It's like it doesn't feel like as thin and as like it doesn't feel like as susceptible to like nicking and stuff. It's like rhino skin, and like my hair is like feels better. But I would really like to dive into like the different types and talk about, I mean, maybe for here we touch on real quick, like I think for a separate category, we talk about like different types of products, what we then determine like what is the best out there in the market. I picked this one up because it's the only one I've found that has like all types of collagen in one rip. Okay. Because I was using one that it doesn't have any additives, doesn't have any fillers. And it also has the vitamin C, which I remember you touching on. It has 90 milligrams of vitamin C. So I ask you now, so if you're going to take this in your diet, what I've been doing is kind of like, I'll just throw it in my protein smoothie without any kind of regard as to like when or where, or like I'll throw it in my cereal. You know, I'll throw it in my protein smoothie. I'll sprinkle it into anything. But like, if you would, have you done any research on kind of like when is the best time to take it, or is there too much that you can take? Can you take too much in a day?
Yeah. So what I'd recommend, I mean, as low as 10 milligrams a day. And when it comes to how much is too much, I mean, that's up for debate. I mean, how much, there's certainly a point of diminishing returns, and this stuff isn't cheap. So, I would titrate it in and find out what works best for you over time. But, start out with a low level and then see what you need. But 10 milligrams is a recommended, at least on many of the packages I've seen. And in terms of when to digest it, this one's interesting because a lot of people don't know this. 60 minutes before training. And it makes sense because as you're, the way joints work, they have the synovial fluids in them and whatnot, and they're like hydrophobic, meaning like there's some sort of weird science going on where due to the pressure and the movement between them, I guess like the fluids are circulated better and they expand out past the joints. And so it just makes for a really nice lubricated joint capsule. So it needs that movement. And so anyways, stuff's going out, stuff's going in. It's a great time. You want to have the constituent parts floating around your system in your body so that it can repair as rapidly as possible.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to pause right there and just say that when stuff's going in and stuff's going out, in and out, like lubrication is always good.
Absolutely. 4 out of 5 dentists would agree.
Right. But okay. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's good, man. Dick jokes are acceptable. Yeah, so that's kind of what I've been doing. Also,
60 minutes before training. So it lubricates your joints. Now, why, if you were to like just be taking this daily, let's say every morning and every like midday on your midday protein smoothie, would you say that it's constantly lubricating your joints, or is there like a specific benefit to taking it 1 hour before?
Yeah, it's just because your brain during that time of your workout, right? You're challenging your body and you're moving, and so as it's seeping out, you want to make sure that like as rapidly as possible, you have those constituent parts there available to regenerate as like your body, initiates that inflammation cycle and starts getting the nutrients there to repair, right? So that happens as soon as you're done. That's what's going on. Your body's in a state of inflammation, which is a good thing. That's why you don't want to take an anti-inflammatory after working out. That's why you don't want to jump right into a cold shower, because you want to engender that cold, that inflammation process. It's a good thing, right? Everybody talks about inflammation being bad. In some cases it's bad when it's out of regulation, but like generally speaking, if it's healthful, it's following a workout or if you injure yourself, like inflammation is good to a certain degree. So you want to have those parts available so that it can, as rapidly as possible, replenish the nutrients that are necessary for repair and regeneration. And think about it this way, right? People talk about that metabolic window, like after they work out, they want to start imbibing a bunch of whey protein and whatnot to help with muscle synthesis. Well, this is the same thing but in terms of more like your connective tissues. So look at it that way, right? You not only want to build your muscles, you want that hypertrophic factor going on. You want to feed the muscle children, but you also want to feed that connective tissue. And it's kind of one of the same, I think. That's the way I look at it.
Okay. So let's shift. We've spent a good time on collagen. I think that's a good introduction to collagen. I think we could then trim this thing up and then talk like specific about different collagen products and when and where. Touch real briefly on what you've learned about like vitamin C and why that's important. Because I noticed this one has vitamin C in it. Some of them don't, but I remember you telling me back in the day, like you need to take collagen with vitamin C.
Yeah, I don't know the exact mechanism behind it, but I've read a few sources where
good. I'm glad. Because let me just pause real quick and say, like, remember we're the left coast caveman. So when you thought words like metabolic window and connective tissue and hypertrophic and stuff, let everybody know that Nick is definitely the more scientifically minded of us two, and that you have credentials and background in you're certified for personal training and you delve pretty deep into this stuff. So it's like definitely throw it, like if you don't know the specific science, all the better, because it's like what you do retain is is kind of like and I think what people retain more than anything is like the practical knowledge is like I remember from our previous podcasts, the rats and thinking about like the when we were talking about fasting and fasting windows. I don't remember any of the fancy words or the science behind it. I just remember like rats did good when they could eat whatever the F they wanted when they ate within a specific time window, and that your body is more adapted to like using even the junk nutrition that you put in it if you don't like just constantly feed your body. And so I think it's cool that you don't like when you say like whatever layman's terms or whatever you remember from the vitamin C research that you've done on it, like just like don't think about what was the science behind it, but what do you recall as like the primary mechanism, even if it's like in your own layman's terms?
Yeah, I mean, real simple. It helps with the absorption into the body. That's all I recall from it. And that's enough. And the fact that you're starting to see the more sophisticated collagen proteins out there and actually adding vitamin C to it, I think that's a powerful statement right there. And let's remember that not all these products are created equal, right? As you mentioned before, you've been out there, you've tried a few different brands, and you're noticing that some come lacking, certain types of the collagen. Oftentimes you'll find that they won't even on the package indicate what types of collagen are in there. So I think that's a big watch out also. The one you have right there is really great because it actually labels all the different types. Now, I'm not familiar with the collagen type 5 or collagen type 10. I would say just, at least from my research, the ones you really want to make sure that are in there is types 1, types 3, which is pretty standard. That seems to be like the go-to for any collagen supplement, but also I think importantly, make sure that type 2 is in there. And that one's, I guess, more associated with articular cartilage for helping repair articular cartilage, as well as there's some sort of implication with like systemic inflammation, your gut. So, I mean, you're going to spend some money on it. You might as well make sure it's got all the right collagens in there, all the right the pieces. And then, as I said, many of them have that vitamin C to help with absorption. And I think it was something like 2x on there. So why not?
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's jump right into then the fitness modality, which is we talked briefly this week about cold immersion of any type. I would say that we have a variety of cold immersion. Maybe we stick on this subject for a week or two, because we could go into many different directions, whether that's what degree temperature, what time, when, where, but the particular interest that we have, because I was talking about like, hey, I do a cold shower every single day. I do, and what I've noticed from it, or what I've, I guess, picked up through my cursory research is that a few benefits, neurological benefits, mental benefits, just the fact that like, hey, doing something that is uncomfortable every single day and putting yourself through that. And because when I go to grab that handle sometimes, man, and crank that shower all the way down to cold, I don't want to. I think to myself, like, I don't want to do it. And getting through that mental block and actually doing it matters. And so like entering the crucible, knowing that you're in control and you are bringing the crucible to you, I think that is a primary benefit. Secondary, third, fourth, fifth, all these other benefits, debatable. The science or whatever is debatable. I think that if you talk about our primal beings, did they have access to a freaking hot shower every single day? Negative. If they were lucky, maybe they had like a hot springs or something like that bubbling naturally from the ground. And I would love to go do some adventures and event stuff and dive into that subject. So maybe I'd jot that one down. But hot springs, we'll talk about that. But cold, so I was very, very fascinated because I used to do like, so anytime I'm in the morning, I'll do like a fasted type cardio routine, particularly in the morning. It's the only time I ever do cardio. Hardly. Well, I'd say not the only time, but most of the time. Like I'll do some striking, or some like, jiu-jitsu is technically cardio. You're getting a cardio work in that exercise. But like in the morning, my routine is usually like do some kind of cardio and then cold after, like get my caffeine in the morning, stimulate my body to burn fat, and then do some kind of cold therapy. And I think that the primary benefits that I've seen are like neurological. I've heard that that they have like tuning the vagal nerve or vagus nerve and that kind of stuff has its benefits. But since we're on the topic of collagen, inflammation, pain, to do something like a cold bath or a cold shower or a cold plunge has its benefits. But you brought up the topic of inflammation after a workout, and particularly avoiding the cold plunge after that. So maybe we just talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, so I lightly touched on it earlier, right? So, we talk about inflammation, how we need to stop it. And I would say that we don't need to stop it all the time, and especially after a workout, because the whole point of inflammation, right? So you think about when your body initiates that whole programming of inflammation, it's essentially, like, let's take the example, you sprain your ankle, right? You bend it the weird way and it gets big, it blows up, it casts itself, it gets hot. Well, the inflammation response there is it's shuttling a bunch of extra blood there, right? And the whole point of the extra blood going to that area is, one, to deliver nutrients, to deliver oxygen, deliver like macrophages with help, like, eat out all the dead cells, the repair as scar tissues being relayed and whatnot. So the whole point of that, and this was new to me also, man. I didn't fucking know this, but you generally, like, you want to avoid any sort of cold following a workout for, once again, the timing is somewhat debatable. I think I've heard, 1 to 2 hours after a workout, you want to avoid any sort of cold, because you want to allow that inflammation to actually initiate that healing process as soon as possible. And what's really interesting, I found out recently, you recall that the RICE protocol?
Yeah. What does the acronym stand for again?
It's rest, ice, CE. The last one's elevate.
Ice. C would be.
What is the C?
Cold? No, that'd be ice. C. Let's just look it up real quick.
Yeah, check it out.
And then we can always edit out the what was that about? Yeah. We can always edit that. So let me see, like, RICE acronym. But while we're doing that, what do you guess?
Yeah. So anyways, the guy that came out with that back in the 70s.
No, I mean, what do you guess the C? Keep guessing the C.
Oh, I don't know. Compression.
There you go. I bet that's right.
Yeah, RICE, I think it is.
RICE acronym. What is the RICE acronym method of injury treatment? The RICE method broken down and explained. The 4 components of the RICE method are explained in detail below. Rest, ice. Injury in few times day thereafter will cause decrease in swelling and pain. Cold temperatures lead to vasoconstriction of the blood vessels, allowing fewer inflammatory markers to access the area. Compression. You got it, man.
Oh,
I'm proud of you, brother. Compression will also help to mitigate blood flow. So you want to stop out the blood flow and inflammatory markers to the area. This will decrease swelling. Elevation. There we go.
Yeah. So, and what's interesting about that is the guy that came up with this back in the 70s, which is like essentially the gold standard for any sort of injury. You go to your GP, your general practitioner, he'll tell you, follow the RICE protocol, and he'll outline, give you a fucking printout about it. My son recently sprained his ankle, and they did the same thing. And what's interesting, the guy that came out with the RICE protocol back, I think it was like the 70s or 80s, he has since renounced it and said, I was wrong, which is such an amazing thing in science, because that's such a booby-trapped area these days to admit you're wrong, and that, all these theses and all the papers are incorrect and have to be updated. But it's a beautiful thing to see that in light of new evidence, he's adjusted his theory on that. And so the creator of RICE has said, hey, I was wrong. The inflammation model, it's a good thing. You want to have inflammation following an injury. And so I just thought that was really interesting that and it's still to this day, and it's one of those things back, like you think about back in the 80s, fat-free was the rage when it comes to dietary, the way you're supposed to eat food and low fat, this, if you want to lose weight and all that. And that shit's still around to this very day, even though now we all know that, fat's good for you. You should eat it. It's not a bad thing. It's not vilified. I thought that was really interesting, that the whole RICE thing is just, it's kind of kaput. But, mainstream science, your general practitioners, they haven't caught on just yet. It's not their fault. There's a lot of information. Things are updated constantly, but I think that's one that's most noteworthy, and that's what kind of really got me thinking about, ice and inflammation, and there's a time and place for it. I've revamped my recovery, after jiu-jitsu. I don't ice myself as much as I used to. Following jiu-jitsu, I might not, I'll prolong my shower for a little bit longer just to allow all those, the inflammation actually to run rampant for a bit, because it's healthy inflammation, not the bad kind. Now, granted, like, dude, if you get really injured and, you're really hurting, absolutely take some anti-inflammatories, use some ice, but I think there's a time and place for it. And it's like one of those, it's like the fire alarm, right? Break in case of emergency. But I think all too often we just go to that right away. And maybe that's not the right answer.
Yeah. What I don't want to fall into the trap of in this channel and with the Left Coast Caveman is like falling into the trap of some doctor somewhere or some scientific study says something so that now we take that as scripture. I think there's definitely benefit to what has worked and what works for people over time. And I don't know that ice or rice or whatever the fuck it's called, rice, has like come to fruition and been something that has stuck with the culture and stuck with people for so long because of some guy. I think that in my own personal experience, like when I fucked my ankle up and I skipped a day of icing, I noticed that the pain was worse. Is that better? Is that good? Who knows? But like, you have to adapt and figure out what works for you. And like in bad injuries, like ice helps. Like the swelling goes down, like it starts to kind of normalize. And then like if you didn't have it, debatable on whether or not that would be better or worse for you. But I can tell you that like in terms of comfort and pain in managing the swelling, and like when it's swollen and it's hot and it's painful, it fucking sucks. And so yeah, I think that there's not, we have to like with nutrition, like with fitness modalities, probably less so with mentalities, but when it comes to fitness and nutrition, it's like not demonizing one thing or the other. Like there's a time and place for everything. There's a time to fucking ice your shit. And there's a time not falling into like the whole thing, like ice is definitely bad for like inflammation is always good. I think a good topic to delve into would be more so like the benefits of inflammation. When could inflammation be good? And what I'm really intrigued by is the post-workout kind of thing. Like after a workout, that's not an acute injury. That's just beneficial inflammation, if you will. Like that's you're willingly tearing down your muscle fibers and you're tearing up your body and you're buffeting your body, to use a term from ancient scripture, and that ties right into our last theme too. Notice I kind of do that on purpose, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to die. I don't want to fall into the trap of like saying, well, this study came out and this guy renounced his rice protocol and therefore that means icing is always bad, because that's not what we're about. We're about like, there's a time and place for everything. There's intention behind everything, especially with nutrition. It's like carbs are not always bad. I'm having carbs in this margarita. Cheers, brother. You're having carbs in that beer. Like there's a time where you want to eat a piece of chocolate cake, but it's the intention behind it that's important. And it's the same thing with like fitness modalities. It's like some people, like you'll see people, influencers come out and say like cardio is bad. This is bad. That is bad. You should do this. You should do keto. You should do, well, sometimes maybe you should do keto. It depends on the intention behind it. And the same thing with this. It's like cold therapy. I'm more interested in not saying that like, oh, well, rice is not the answer. Rice is probably the answer for some things. Like when I played basketball and I snapped my ankle, which is still bad to this day, rice was needed. Rice was good. Trust me. Like getting ice on that bitch ASAP was the answer.
But you don't know that. But you don't know that definitively, right? So
I do. Hold on a second, because when I started to slack off, it started getting worse. And it's like it's like, I don't need a scientific study to tell me, like when I started skipping days and prolonging my protocols and getting lazy with the icing and noticing that I couldn't walk on it and it started hurting worse and it started like not healing. And I like to know that that was not a good thing, you know, like, but when I was more strict with my protocol on like icing it, you know, dealing with the inflammation, and it got better, you know.
But you see, the thing is though, and this is the trap, right? You don't have a side-by-side comparison of somebody that didn't ice and somebody that did to like say definitively. This is anecdotal. So, you know, you can never know, right? Like, because you don't have a control to compare to. It worked for you, right? But you don't have that, well, if somebody didn't, would it have been better? And so I think it's interesting to look at a different paradigm for it because, I mean, this is the guy that came out with it. This is the guy that invented it, that like, you know, and he's even saying like, hey, I don't think I had it all correct. And now to your point, is there a time and place for it? Yes, absolutely. Say after a surgery or a catastrophic injury, for certain, there might be a degree of inflammation that's uncomfortable that you want to moderate as an analgesic, as in you don't want to feel the pain. Absolutely, sure. But I think if like, what's interesting in that is that perhaps if you didn't ice it, you might heal faster. And that's where it's really interesting. And this is the whole point of Left Coast Caveman, right? Well, at least one of the tenets is how to optimize, become that supreme being. And this is where it gets interesting to me is how can I like optimize my healing? And maybe I had it wrong. Maybe I was prolonging my healing by using the ice protocol when I didn't need it, when the inflammation was necessary and I didn't, I mean, you look at, it's not a great example, right? But you think of ancient caveman, you know, hunting down a pterodactyl or whatever, snaps his ankle a little bit, you know, not a break, but he sprains it. He didn't have ice. He had his body casted it itself and he had to Charlie Mike that shit no matter what, right? Now, we live in a different time. So we have access to ice. We have access to non-steroidal anti-inflammatory.
That's where the left coast comes in.
Right. So it's like, well, which, you know, there's a time and place for it. I don't think there's a blanket approach. I just think that suspend current beliefs on like that as soon as you get injured, you need to have ice, because I think that might not be the case. And that's where I think it gets really interesting. And that's where because I'm a guy that, dude, I sit in an ice pack when I drive, you know, like I ice all the time. And I'm like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that was impeding the healing process. And that's where it gets really interesting to me.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would say that like questioning whatever we talked about earlier this week was a priori. Like, what do you believe is correct without evidence? And that's always something you should be questioning. And I think that that's what you're digging into is like, I think that what you're saying is, let's not just accept that as a universal truth without digging in a little deeper. And that would probably be something worthwhile to dig into. I think it's more applicable to things like post-workout rather than acute injury. I know I have a notification popping up. That is weird, but something that we could kick down the street further and I think address more. But I also think that the reason why rice is with us is not because some guy in some study invented it. I think that it occurs because we as a species have figured out over time, and somebody figured out how to put their signature on it and call it something rice. It's like we figured out over time, yeah, well, shit, you know, let's grunt monkey noises at each other and figure out, hey, brother, when you snap, even if you're in the Sanhedrin, you know, like you don't have access to ice, but these people over here do. And when we started noticing, hey, pack some ice on that bitch, and the swelling is gonna go down, and your healing is going to expedite.
So why do you think it expedites with the ice? What do you think?
I don't know. I have no idea, and I'm not going to pretend to know. I'm just saying that it's with us as a priori, like let's say like modality. And so something worthwhile to look into, but I'm not willing to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say that just because a rice inventor came out and said, hey, I got some things wrong, maybe he did. But, and it's something worth looking into. I'm not willing to say that it doesn't have its time and place, like with regard to injury, but I think that where it's more applicable is post-workout, and then like, I think what's more beneficial is to think about not when and where cold therapy and why cold. Well, I shouldn't say more beneficial. I think they're both equally beneficial. I think taking this subject on as a follow-up, as next week's conversation or something we touch base on Monday to decide what do we talk about, where do we go from here, would be, okay, there's two different topics here we're talking about. When and where and how cold therapy, and what are the benefits of inflammation?
Yeah.
So inflammation, so he's saying like, okay, maybe there's some benefit to inflammation.
Yeah.
And so maybe you shouldn't be icing everything.
Right. It's
and that's probably why, like, there's because really when you're icing, I've heard like ice and heat alternation and going back and forth between ice and heat.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where I think out of regulation, right, it becomes pathological. Too much inflammation is a bad thing. So I think a good example of this is when you get sick, you got a fever, right? Fever is like, it's a protocol of inflammation, right? You're making your body less hospitable to viral replication. Okay, so ideally that is a good thing, but what do we do as soon as we get a fever? Child gets a fever, and dude, I'm guilty of it too. My kid gets a fever, you want to give him aspirin and whatnot. But like you're essentially blunting your body's natural path to healing itself. But that being said, if you got a 105, that's out of regulation. That's now pathological, and like you do need to fucking get that inflammation out of control. So I think there might be some analogs to that, which I think is kind of cool, right? A way to look at it where like too much of anything is bad. So too much inflammation is bad, but like a little bit of inflammation in that situation of being sick is a good thing, and that gets you on the path to healing.
Yeah. So I think before we kick on to the next subject and I refill my drink, to take a quick pause, if you got time, I would say that for the key takeaways here, I think clearly we keep having this conversation and digging into the benefits of inflammation and when, where, how cold therapy. I think that cold daily, if I were to establish a core tenet of Left Coast Caveman way of life, there are so many health influencers out there that prop up the benefits of cold therapy, that it would be foolish for somebody to decide that for any reason whatsoever it's not beneficial to bring that into your repertoire. And I think that whether that's finishing your shower every day with a cold shower, or jumping into cold, or splashing your face with cold water, or whatever the case, that is a benefit. And if only for the reason, like not physiological, but if only for the reason of mental. Like there is a key difference between people, the fold, let's call it, the yokels, let's call it, to use Shakespearean language. Now we're getting into I'm slowly stepping us into the mentality piece here, because that's when we get into literature. You and I are both readers, but Shakespeare always used the term yokel.
Is that right? That's where, because I always thought that was a slang word for some Southern folk or something. So
no, yokel comes
Shakespearean.
I'm gonna have to jot that down as a follow-up too to verify that I'm correct. But I do believe that the term yokel comes from Shakespeare, and it's used to indicate like the people who are just the people, and then you got the people on their path. So I believe that there is a distinct difference between people who have identified what it is that it takes to get them on the path that they want to achieve in life, a worthwhile goal, a worthwhile vision of excelling in life. And that's kind of what we're all about, right? And whether doesn't matter what that is. Like, it has to be a worthwhile goal. We can take time to identify that at some point, but like progressing towards that requires some form of getting out of your comfort zone and pressing through boundaries that otherwise would keep you just steady Eddie going through the motions of life. The yokels, that's what they do. They do not press past their their comfort zone. They just kind of keep going, and they start to, once discomfort comes their way, they medicate it. It's always about like throwing something at it to make it go away, and pressing through it is key. Like getting past that point of where you want to say stop. Like I remember a trainer telling me once before, the one difference between an Olympian and somebody who just accelerates in their sport is the Olympian understands that your brain will tell you to stop 10 times before your body actually needs to. And so training yourself to know that can start with something as simple as cold therapy. And that's really why I use it. Like I didn't think about the inflammation impacts or anything or the timing until you brought that to my attention and talked about rice, which is cool. And I think that we should continue to discuss that. But in terms of cold, we can agree right here. You ask 100 people in the street, I guarantee you probably all 100 of them will tell you, I take a hot shower. Bitch, I got hot on my faucet for a reason. I'm washing my hands with hot water, right? I'm washing my car with hot water. I'm washing my body with hot water. Why? Because it's uncomfortable. People don't want to do it. So like, if there's one way that every single person that might be listening to this can introduce a little discomfort into their life, maybe you already got a discomfort into your life and you don't need it, but I'm telling you, if there's one thing you can do to get past those mental blocks, it's to crank that faucet down to as cold as it gets towards the end and just take it and just start. And it just meant because your mental will start to mess with you and you'll start to say to yourself like, man, this is not comfortable. And you say at least 4 minutes. You say at least 4 minutes. Do it until, and I had this written down in my notes somewhere at some point in my phone, but I was thinking about the USS Indianapolis, right? When I was in Indianapolis one time, there was a booth and there was an old guy, an old Navy guy. He had to have been like 98 years old, man. I walked up to him. He was a survivor from the USS Indianapolis. And I was like, man, it is a pleasure to meet you. Like, I am so honored to be able to meet you. I have read a book about the USS Indianapolis. I cannot believe what you guys went through. Like, what an honor to meet you, sir. And what I remember most from whatever book I read, I can't even remember the title, was like those guys were bobbing in the ocean, getting picked off by sharks every single day, getting like watching their comrades, get freaking picked off by sharks. Okay. And what I remember most about that though was like at some point, like I don't remember how many days the USS Indianapolis, maybe I should look that up in case, like to just give honor to the honorable, but like USS Indianapolis, let's see, like how many days I don't want to, I'll edit out the dumb stuff, but
was this in Midway or Pearl Harbor?
USS Indianapolis. So
where
at some point, those guys said USS Indianapolis, let's see how many days, Wikipedia. USS Indianapolis was a Portland-class heavy cruiser for the United States Navy named for the city of Indianapolis, Indiana, launched 1931. It was a flagship for the commander of Scouting Force 1 for 8 years, then flagship Admiral Raymond Spruance in 1943 and 1944, while commanded the 5th Fleet in battle across the Central Pacific during World War II. But it was sunk. Okay, so where the hell is that information about? That should be the sinking. Okay, here we go, sinking. At 00:15, how do you say that in military time? 0:15?
Yeah, after
okay.
12.
On the 30th of July, 1945, Indianapolis was struck on her starboard side by 2 Type 95 torpedoes. One in the bow and one in the amidships from the Japanese submarine I-58, captained by Commander Hashimoto.
That's a very Japanese sounding name right there.
Yeah, let me try to skip to how many days they were out bobbing in the ocean. That's what I'm going for. I don't want to guess. I want to know for sure because they deserve that. 12 minutes later, she rolled completely over, then on her stern rose into the air, and she sank. 300 of the 1,195 crewmen aboard went down with the ship.
Damn.
With the lifeboats, and many without life jackets. The remainder of the crew was set adrift. Rescue. Navy command did not know of the ship's sinking until survivors were spotted in the open ocean 3.5 days later. So were they only bobbing out there for 3.5 days? It seems like longer than that.
That still seems like a long time to be sitting in that ocean.
Yeah, that'd be a long time to be bobbing in the ocean for sure. Let me see if it immediately dropped. Let me see if it has radio transmitter. Blah 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 blah. Let me see how many, like, if they talk about the sharks. Other survivors were found in various states of delirium. All right, exposure. All right, many of the survivors were injured and all suffered from lack of food and water. Some found rations such as Spam and crackers among the debris. Exposure to the elements from the hot sun during the day and hypothermia at night, as well as severe desquamation due to continued exposure to salt water and bunker oil, and shark attacks. While some killed themselves, other survivors were found in various states of delirium or suffered from hallucinations. Only 316 of the nearly 900 men set adrift after sinking survived. Two of the rescued survivors, Robert Lee Shipman and Frederick Harrison, died in August of 1945. Hundreds of sharks were drawn to the wreck by the noise of the explosion and the scent of blood in the water. After picking off the dead and wounded, they began attacking survivors. The number of deaths attributed to sharks ranges from a few dozen to 150. So what I remember most from the book that was written about that, which has talking about cold plunging and going into this, but every time I take a cold shower, I think about this because it's like discomfort. Like there was something in that book from a survivor who said, like, discomfort only lasts for as long as you let it in your mind. As soon as you accept your reality, you can like mitigate that. You can say, this is my reality, and start, and like you can. So even in the midst of a cold shower, I think that's the most beneficial part of cold therapy, is having that moment where it doesn't feel good. Whereas most people on every day, the yokels, they don't have that gear in their mind. They don't, and so when something bad happens to them, they react, they freak out, they get emotional, they like. And so if there's anything that benefits from them, or even in jiu-jitsu, like I think that's probably a good segue into like jiu-jitsu and stuff, where when you're getting crushed and you can't breathe, you have two options. You can either freak the fuck out and tap, or you can try to mitigate that thing and like start thinking about, like, okay, am I okay? Am I alive right now? Can I breathe? Can I last another hour? Can I last another minute in the cold shower? And that's the thing that, like, the benefit to me. But going into, like, I think that segues into the quote that you sent earlier on in the week, which was like attacking yourself, buffeting the body. Like, let me go grab this drink real quick, and then do you want to?
Yeah, keep going. Dude, it's Friday night, brother.
Pick up this thought.
Yeah. I like where you're going.
Take it from there into the quote that you sent earlier on the week. Do you have a copy of that quote? You know what I'm talking about?
I know. I do. That wasn't.
You have no clue?
I don't. I made one up, and I don't know. Like, but I think it was one that was a legit quote I sent from a long time ago. I was just saying something cheeky.
I'll find it. All right, because we don't text that much, so I'll find it. Let me see.
I see.
Because I think my first response was like, "That would be good on a T-shirt."
Yeah, something about stroking the beast.
No. That
one stuck with me, dude. I love that one. I've been using it.
I was like, don't poke, don't stroke the beast, poke the beast, and choke the beast. But I was making light of the actual quote that you sent me, because you were talking about jiu-jitsu or something like that, and I said that would be good on a t. It's a really great idea. That would be good on a T-shirt. Let me find it. There had to have been a reason why you sent it. Oh, I said, this is a great line to have on merch. You said train like an animal and eat like a king.
Oh, so that was just me. That's no quote. I'll take full fucking copyright on that.
Oh, no. You use quotations in this one. Civilize the mind, but make savage the body.
Yep, that's Dr. Johnson. Yeah.
Civilize the mind, but make savage the body. So that's what we're talking about here. Is like in the moment, like a cold shower doesn't do it. Like, your body is uncomfortable, but it's your mind that mitigates that. You civilize it. What does that mean? So I think that's a great segue into that. And then I responded to you. I sent you, before I sent you the thing that I had a crazy dream about you getting eaten by a tiger. And I said, we had this Zoom seminar going and you were filming from the woods. I heard a deep growl, stepped into the seminar. There was a huge Bengal tiger stalking you. After several minutes, you said, the camera, it's going to attack. He started mauling you. But anyway, because like, civilize the mind, but make savage the body. And then I sent you something from Corinthians, which was written by St. Paul back in the day, an old Hebrew scribe. All of my shit's gone now. But anyway, if I could find it, I think it goes into the same subject, and then we could cap this thing off with this conversation. But buffet the body. This thing's still recording, an hour and 12 minutes. Buffet your body. So 1 Corinthians 9:27. And just to make clear to everybody, no religious affiliation, but I do believe that there is power in all ancient, like whether it's Buddhists, Taoists, Atum, if you're talking old ancient Egyptian religions, and certainly like Judeo-Christian, I don't believe in the religious affiliations and like the dogmatism and the marketability of those kind of things and how they've been used in society. But I mean, there's no doubt about it that there's definitely ancient wisdom written in those texts. But like when you say civilize the mind but make savage the body, the first thing that came to mind was 1 Corinthians 9:27, because I remember hearing this at one point, like, no, I strike a blow to my body. Like, meaning I bring physical pain to my own body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize. Like, what does that mean? Like, so you and I, Left Coast Caveman, make civilize the mind, but make savage the body. Like, why is it that in order for us to be taken seriously, because that's what this guy is saying too, St. Paul. So while I preach to others, if I'm preaching whatever gospel you have, whatever truth you have to share with other human beings, I myself will not be disqualified. So like if somebody sees you and says, well, you know, like what it's saying is like, there's an element of, okay, like what is fitness? Why do we take fitness, mentality, and nutrition and put it together? It's like, well, because how can anybody take seriously our mentality if we're not buffeting our body and making savage our body or whatever? Like not being I said, make my body my slave. Like not being a slave to my body, like not being comfortable all the time, not eating the Oreos all the time because that's what my natural instinct is, not boozing all the time. Like I'm getting up and going on a run. Like, why is it important? So like before I go grab this drink and make that my slave, you know, like why is it important to make savage the body, make my body my slave, in order for people to take my mentality seriously? That's what it's saying. Both quotes are saying the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's real simple, man. There is value in suffering, and we all know it. And there's so much out there that tries to convince you otherwise, right? This whole fat forward movement, this acceptance of mediocrity. It all tells you that things are hard and it's okay to just tap the fuck out. But it's not. We all know it, right? That there's value in suffering. And it's summed up by one word. It's simple. It's discipline. When you go into that shower, and you know that you're going to do 4 minutes on cold, and it's uncomfortable, and your body says, I don't want to do this, and your mind says, I don't want to do this, but there's this overreach there, this recourse you go forward with and say, no, you're going to. You're disciplined, and that seeps out to all aspects of life. And I think we'd be hard pressed to find anybody that's successful out there that, one, doesn't oblige to suffering, doesn't in some way hold it holy, right? That they embrace the suck, right? That that saying. It's necessary. It's part of the process. We evolved from suffering. We are the product of suffering. And to deny that is to deny our inner nature, our outer nature. And once you think you connect those together, I think you got some real power there. And that's why you sit in that shower. Life's fucking easy these days, right? Everyday life. I mean, we wear, think about just from a temperature perspective, okay? We meet the seasons with clothing and with climate control, okay? Our bodies no longer regulate to the environment. We're no longer, and that's the whole point of those cold showers, is to attenuate that vascular system so that it remembers how to constrict, how to dilate in influence of the environment. And that's exactly what you're doing. And you're probably noticing, I don't know about you, I've been doing cold showers for a while now. It's not that fucking cold anymore. And you get in there, maybe, are you working that muscle of the mind, or is the muscle of the body? Probably both. The muscle of mind being discipline. But it gets easier. I now need and that's kind of one of the projects I'm working on. It's like, hey, I want to either build a cold plunge or find something that's more affordable, because the showers aren't doing it. I like them. They're good, but I want to take it to the next level, because I've habituated my body now. The dilation, the constriction of the vessel, it's primed, it's ready, it's good. I mean, maybe it's a Northern European thing. We're both, light-skinned folk. We deal with the cold very well. And maybe that's a factor too. My girlfriend, she's Filipino. Dude, she fucking just under cold, no go. Can't do it. And I was talking to somebody else that was of Islander descent, and they mentioned how hard cold is for them. Now, maybe it's a mental thing. Maybe it's a
It's a mental thing. Perhaps. It's 100% a mental thing.
Perhaps.
It's 100% a mental thing. And so there's no doubt in my mind, to kind of tie this thing up, put a bow around it, I think that there's no doubt in my mind that there's benefits in the Crucible. And I think anything that we do, we stick to that core tenet. But there's also that thing that I'm not quite sure we've uncovered, which is, and tying back to the original opening of this conversation, which is when you start diminishing what you want, like whether that's comfort, and you start sticking to whether it's discipline or a routine or a system or a plan, because there's an element of discipline to a plan too. Like jumping on this call tonight, even though we were both texting back and forth, like, man, I had work. I was working all day. I was running and gunning all day. Now it's 9:30. I had all 3 kids tonight. We had every excuse to blow this off, right? And it's like those little moments of, okay, if you're a person who you don't have to broadcast it to the world. You don't have to make it known to other people. You can keep it concealed to yourself. But if you are a person who takes hardship and invites it and does something every day to bring yourself out of that comfort zone, what I'm taking from this parable, both of them, the make savage your, or make civilize your mind, make savage the body, and buffet your body, make slave your body, so that other people, when you're preaching your gospel or when you're preaching your truth, so that your truth resonates with people. Why is that? I think that's the open-ended thing that we might not have time to go into tonight, but why is it that because I think there's an element of hardness. Why do people gravitate towards Jocko? Why do people gravitate towards these people that are disciplined? It's because there's an element of truth to that. Why is that? Whereas you can see through people's bullshit. You can see through softness. You can see through people that talk the talk, but they're not walking the walk. They've never done something hard. Why is blues music so so heavy and so soulful. It's like, well, these people went through hard times. You know, there's truth to that. And that resonates with people. People resonate with hard people. And like, the more you can invite hardships into your life, not to like in a sadistic way. Like, I'm not gonna be like, dude, like, yeah, how about you fucking, cut me up and whip me up and like make me bleed. It's like, that's weird. But like, the more you can do something hard, like even if it's like cold, that's why cold shower. Like, everybody takes a warm shower, I'm gonna take a cold shower. Everybody wakes up at 7 a.m., I'm gonna wake up at 5 a.m. Like, I'm gonna wake up at 4 a.m. I'm gonna wake up at 3 a.m. Everybody wants to get 8 to 10 hours of sleep, I'm gonna get 6. Like, fuck you guys. Like, I'm gonna make sure that like, my truth resonates with the world, and I'm gonna do that by demonstrating I'm willing to go through the hard shit. Like, I'm willing to take on hard shit so that when something comes up, like with the USS Indianapolis sinks, I'm the one bobbing in the water saying, everybody, give it one more hour. You're gonna be all right. We're gonna live through this, and like, that's the courage that makes people want to go through life, because life is challenging. Life is hard. Why do you think that like every major religion in the world deals with suffering? It's because that's what life is.
It's a unifying factor.
Yeah.
It's something we all experience. And, and this sounds terrible. I don't know why it popped in my mind, but I got to say it, is survival isn't for everyone. You know what I mean? It's not. Not everybody's supposed to be here, and that sucks. And I'm not cool with it. I mean, it just sounds shitty to even come out my mouth, but it's not for everyone, And luckily, we live in a really easy time where you can survive without much output, without much input. It's easy, and it won't always be that way. And I hope that it is for as long as possible. But it's not for everyone. We're not all supposed to make it. The ship goes down. We're not all going to, it's just the way it is. We're not all supposed to progress forward. The genes aren't supposed to go to the next generation. And that sounds terribly like eugenics. Like, definitely not getting into that area, but it is.
No, eugenics is a good area to go on, and I think that we at some point eugenics. Actually, I'm gonna write that one down and circle it up, because I've been on eugenics before, and I think that's something that we pick up. I think we got to touch base on Monday, dude. We it's been a while since we've done this, and it feels good to get it out. I think we've got our rhythm, but it's like, we got to get this to 30 to 45 minutes, or else we're going to lose people. It's an hour and 30 minutes. We could keep rolling, but I've got 5 topics that we'll hash out on Monday. But I think that, because eugenics is a great one. It's a great one to think about. But
we all practice it, right? Think about, like, you practice eugenics just by the simple way of who you mate with, right? That's a selective pressure right there.
Save it.
Mate with.
Yeah. Save it. Mate selection is another one. I'm going to write that one down too, because mate selection, I've got that on that whiteboard over there. Yes. I've got that on this whiteboard over here. I've got love. We've got so much stuff to talk about, dude. It's not even funny. I don't know what we call this, season 4, season 1, either way, but it's good to kick this thing off again. And I think we uncovered some cool stuff, and we pick it up again on Monday and figure out what we do next Friday.
Well, hey, man, we got it down. We got the app now. We know how to record. So, and I have faith in your editing abilities. I've seen how you've done it before. So
we have to make it better. We have to make it better. And is my screen very blurry to you?
No, it might. Dude, my lighting's fucked right now.
It's your lighting. I'd say, like, for one thing for next time would be to try to figure out your camera.
Yeah. I want to do it in the basement, dude, but I don't get fucking reception down there. Like, the cave, it seems like the proper place to cast from, but
yeah,
can't make it happen. So, I got another, my son's room. I should turn that into my office and actually fucking use it. Have a little space where you really get in the mood. Because right now I'm in the kitchen, and this is where I work. But like, I don't necessarily want to have this conflated with fucking selling coffee and that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? This is a more noble cause.
Yes, sir. I will. I'll try to put an intro. We should shoot an intro video and have like an intro, and for now I'll put our logo in the quick intro and then an outro, and I'll post it on YouTube by Wednesday, and we'll let it rip, dude.
Yeah, well, just think about this, man. If you ever watch, I know you have, you watched the first Rogan episode. I mean, they had snowflakes in the background. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's the only thing that matters is creating the content. So
yeah, running, keeping the muscle going on this gets easier as you practice it, flows better.
Yeah.
The input, the setup, all that stuff. So we'll fine tune as we go. I think the important thing here is just to accumulate data points. Get comfortable with it. Grow from it. Like actively engage the material, rethink it. Draw new conclusions. And that's it's all part of the learning process. And it's for you, it's for me, or for all of us, right? I think it's kind of fun, man.
Well, keeping